the worldview and the biblical view. For me, this is actually a blessing. And the God in his own ways will bring in stuff that is extremely useful at the right time for the sake of delivering us from the untruths that seem to be bedeviling us. Now, you see, looking at the lesson this week, now the author is extremely careful by beginning with the statement that we human creatures don't seem to have neutral positions. You see that? Now, in other words, what the author is actually suggesting is that we tend to stick to certain ideas even when we do not have the benefit of doubt about the manner in which the things that we see seem to reflect something else that's deeper than the way they just look like. Now, like for example, many times when we reason out things, it makes a lot of sense to begin saying that there may not be a straight answer. We human beings would not like the idea of A or B, that the answer is A or B. You see, we seem to stick to a specific answer even when we do not have the reality that allows us to understand that which we're talking about. So then, my brothers and sisters, here this lesson is going to allow us to be able to firm up our beliefs, in fact, our fundamental beliefs. The question of the existence of our God, you see, because look at the way we interpret. Stan, you were talking a lot earlier about, you and me, and the most learned people now today, initially seeing the world as standing still. And yet later on, with the benefit of knowledge, now we actually know that the earth does not stand still. Look at that. Now, where did we get this conviction that that is the truth, that is the reality? So that's why we tend to have that neutral position. And you see, we're firming up our fundamental beliefs this week because when you look at, for instance, Genesis chapter 1, and I like that. In fact, I've never seen it the way I saw it in the course of this week. Just look at Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1. Just read that. And you'll find that there's something very strange about that Genesis 1:1. What does it say? Josh.
Thank you. Genesis 1 verse 1 says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
Okay. Just leave it at that. There is no theoretical background that will allow us to know that actually God created. Now, God as a creator is assumed to exist, isn't it? So from a biblical perspective, God actually exists, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're not simply here just because we're here. So we're not natural phenomena in the sense that we're here because we're here. That is materialistic. And this is how it is. Atheistic beliefs actually come in. And you are noting that atheistic beliefs seem to be, challenging our fundamental beliefs. Yeah. The Pope Francis, with all due respect, is now saying that it's important that we consider non-heterosexual relationships, that men should marry men and women should marry women. Now, that is not a biblical view. You don't have to go to school to appreciate that that is against nature. You see, and you see, is that not challenging our fundamental beliefs? Now, you can be able to see what Pope Francis believes in. Now, sticking with that fact, it tells you that as a human being, he has a neutral position, isn't it? He doesn't have the benefit of an alternative. And so what his interpretation, Stanley was saying earlier, that the reality is interpreted through filters. And so our interpretation is based on what we stuck onto. And that may not reflect the reality. Now, I leave it at that. Then we will be able to demystify the other things later on as we go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elder. I know we are moving on, but maybe Ben, you can pick us up from there first before we have more comments.
Okay. Thanks, Stan, and thank you, Elder, for going ahead of me and sharing what's the biblical worldview. And meaning that there are two kinds of worldviews. One is the biblical, and the other one, as it has been said, is the human worldview, which is the natural. We think that things just happen. And with this verse that is our memory text, it's a verse that I'll still be tackling. And he's saying, I'm tackling the first part, which is the eyes of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on the evil and the good. But at times it seems that God has let evil to run rampant in this world, to a point that we even wonder whether he notices this evil. And what Sunday is talking about is that the eyes of the Lord are everywhere, telling us that God is omnipresent. But these verses, which is Psalms 53 verse 1 and Proverbs 15 verse 3, is telling us that the fool in his heart says there is no God. They are corrupt and their ways are vile. There is no one who does good. So who is a fool here? It's telling us a fool does not necessarily have to be, does not necessarily lack intelligence. And that's why on Monday, even on Sunday and Monday, we are talking about Oxford University professor who theorized that the world and everything around it. When we come to Leibniz's question, we are talking about a German thinker. So we are talking of very intelligent people here. And unfortunately, the atheists, the unbelievers, are highly educated people. So it's now we are coming now to who these fools are. Fools are people who reject God. And God is the only one who can be able to save them. So we are talking about people who are intelligent, but I like what this title, The Eyes of the Lord, the biblical worldview is talking about. The biblical worldview seeks to restore God's image in mankind. And because we've lost it and we've lost it completely. And this is where you hear people saying that there is no God. Why do they say there is no God? They say so that they can cover their sin. They say so that they can give their own excuse to continue in sin. And they say so to ignore the judgment that has will come forth. And actually is to understand that this evil at one point will come to an end. And God is the one who will bring it to an end. So as the biblical worldview seeks to restore God's image in mankind, then we need to study and understand that God is the creator. We need to understand that everything that God exists in this world is God who created. And the eyes of the Lord are everywhere in this world and his omnipresence. Look, can you compare a small kid whom you just share the eyes of the Lord are everywhere in this world? He will even tell you, even now he's looking at us. He is everywhere. That kid, with his literal knowledge, will now understand the biblical worldview of God's image to mankind. But now go and talk to that professor from Oxford. What will he tell you? He will tell you that there is no God. Things just happen. There were divine beings that came and created. The issue of evolution, they will try to justify it. And by doing so, meaning that they are the fools. So we are getting it right here that a fool is a person who rejects God. And as I said, God is the only person who can be able to save this fool. So the eyes of the Lord are with us everywhere, and it is God who has brought this Christian education so that we can be able to understand him. And he has given us this Bible, and he has given us this time so that we can be able to understand. Those other Hellenic views that come are views that are personal, and they will never replace the views that God is the creator of this world. That is my sharing, and I will welcome sharings on the same.
I'd like to put some very quick comment coming from YouTube. Sorry, am I being heard? And the comment comes from Vincent Mokaya, who talks about simply what is the worldview. I'd asked this question, what is the worldview? And the answer they give us is simply how you view the world, that the view is influenced by perception and environment. Now, Kefa talks about there are two worldviews and refers us to Psalms 53, 1 to 2. Maybe we'll read that as we move on. But as I leave that, that's comments that are on YouTube. So maybe people can comment. But here's a question that maybe I should ask our learned people here. There's still this issue about saying, okay, if we are saying evolution is not right, then how quickly are we accepting mutation? And every day we talk about, oh, the COVID virus has even mutated, but the HIV virus has mutated. And if we're talking about mutation, how come we can accept mutation on one side and refuse evolution on one side? Elder, how do we explain to them?
Yeah, again, as I said earlier on, human thinking that is limited by the worldview does not allow an intelligent human being to be able to discern reality around him. You see, now reality that is the natural that exists does not exist because we recognize it exists. No, it must have a purpose. The existence has a purpose, isn't it? Yeah, so we're limited in our thinking when we entertain the assumption that that which exists is natural and it exists because it exists. So we are limited in that sense. If you think like that, then you're thinking like that scientist about the mutation of the coronavirus, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is limited. I'm only saying that idea is limited, okay? And it does, and this is really what we're discussing about, the limitation of the worldview as opposed to the biblical view, the world biblical view. Notice that our God, as we said, now my brother Mange told us very well that our God is not limited by that which he created, isn't it? Our God is everywhere, okay, supervising his creation, okay? He knows what exists and so on. He has mapped it all. So when the scientist, that professor, then argues that indeed life is meaningless unless you and me give it a meaning, then you can see that there is a limitation in that thinking. And actually the assumptions that guide science and theoretical underpinnings of science are limited by those overarching theoretical assumptions. That's where we are. I can tell you as a scientist that that's where we are. So we have to accept the biblical view in order not to be fools in the context of what we have read in the Bible. We are a fool. We are fools if we don't recognize the existence of who? Of God. I think I've answered that question, Stan. Thank you.
Yes, here we go. Happy Sabbath. I think, Elder, you've emphasized that well, and I'm happy this is your area, so I'm less scared. Yeah. Now, there's that part where we were explaining about how we teach. It's all about education, and so we must see it from both views. You cannot teach faith using doubt. Yeah, I cannot teach evil. I cannot teach good using evil. One must be the central point. And as we've been reading the past lessons, remember the focus is to bring man back. Remember we lost it at Eden, and so we're trying to regain the lost steps. Yeah, we're trying to regain our grip on the foundation who had been erected by God. And so there's that part where I think Brother Mange has explained that we cannot teach the world's view to our children and expect them to reason in a biblical way. First of all, we are Christians, so I don't even understand how we would be, we were laughing in stand thinking, we are Christians teaching the world. How does that even go? It should be the other way around. It is us who have that light that should shed. And as we understand, the church means ecclesia. I think that's in Greek. Ecclesia means called from the world, called out. So if we were called, I think we're also called from our way of education, our way of our views, our perception of things, how we internalize the physical world. Because Isaiah says that the heathen wonder at the stars and the world, is it? But God has given us the light. And I think we shall see it in the following, that is Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. It will explain better how that God had made man earlier with all the details about him and the land which he gave. Remember, we were given Eden to take control, to subdue it, to overrule, to take charge. So there's no way he would give us charge if he did not also give us a manual with which all the details about the land, the title deed. We're given the title deed of the land. We are told what to do, what's the jurisdiction. And so when it comes to now us viewing how things function, I think the Christian world have a better view of it than the world can share, because at the end of the day, it all comes back to God. Whether we refuse it or not, it always comes back to the Creator. So I think we are on the right light, and I pray that we continue. Yeah.
I think we're going to go on, but there's a comment that I'm seeing that has come from Enos, who's with us here in Zoom. And he says, our duty as Christians is to demonstrate why the Bible is the source of true education. To the atheistic material worldview, which is not in harmony with the Bible. I think I agree with that particular comment. Kefa also puts a comment that our biblical worldview, Christ is at the center. So Jesus is the center of the biblical worldview. So as we continue, let's just go on to the next thing, because I think now we need to know more from the perspective now. Now let's enter to the real issue of one. I know Monday became interesting because of that name that is there. So there's the Leibniz question. And we wanted to know that Leibniz question and hear what Elder has to tell us about Leibniz question. And maybe Elder, you can still also take us down from the Leibniz question all the way to the biblical worldview. So Elder, welcome.
Thank you. Again, I like us to go back to that verse that we read that reflects on the fact that you and me are fools if we do not recognize the existence of God. Can somebody read that verse in entirety again? I want it to resonate in our minds.
That's Proverbs. It's Proverbs what?
You and me are fools
Mm-hmm.
if we do not
No, that's Psalms. Oh, yes. That's Psalms
recognize
50.
the existence of our God.
That's Psalms 50.
Psalms 53 verse 1, it says,
Yes,
the fool says in his heart, there is no
yes,
God.
yes.
They are corrupt and their ways are vile.
Thank
There
you.
is
Thank you, Brother Mainki. Now, Brother Mainki, you were thinking and reflecting about this German thinker, isn't it?
yes.
Yeah. Now, let's see the issues that he had. And this German thinker, though this is an intelligent person, and later on we'll get to that other professor. Now, now look at his you know, what was in his mind when he was reflecting on the fact that you know, looking around the world, he would see that there was something. In other words, he would see material things. Now, he saw plants, he saw animals, and he saw trees and so on. And then he would ask himself this question: why is something here rather than nothing? Now, why is something here rather than nothing? I mean, why would he think so? That rather than nothing, there was something. Now, and actually the Bible answers that question very well. And actually this thinker would have found the answer in the Bible. And this is why earlier on, when we were reflecting on this idea of there being a purpose for that which was created, and that we acknowledge as Christians the existence of our God, we noticed that in Genesis 1, verse 1, there is actually no assumption about the existence. I mean, there is an assumption that God exists. Just let's read that again. Just again, let's repeat that again. Genesis 1, verse number 1. We don't go into the theory about the existence of God. No. Oh, am I lost? My brother Josh.
Sorry. Yeah, my mic was off.
Oh, okay.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Yes.
So there is no assumption that God does not exist. God, the creator, exists, and he created, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, later on, then we need to understand that God created for a purpose. So we will not ask this question about this German thinker, why there is something and not nothing. You see?
Yeah.
Now, let's read another verse. That will really help us again. Look at Exodus. No. Let's look at John chapter 1, verse 1, and just read that passage, 1 to 4. It's an important passage for us.
Okay.
John chapter 1, 1 to 4.
Here we go. John 1, 1 to 4.
Yes.
Okay, this reads,
Yes.
in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Verse
Thank
2.
you. Thank you. Now,
Yeah.
without that foundation, everything else breaks down. By the way, even what Brother Kefa was saying earlier on about the fact that the biblical view revolves around Jesus Christ. Without the existence of a God and without creation understood to have occurred because of the existence of God, then everything else, including our redemption, actually breaks down. We cannot actually, therefore, with benefit, talk about redemption if we argue that actually God does not exist. And I like the way actually it's put in Exodus. Let's look at Exodus 3, verse 13 and verse 14. Now, my brother Stan, read that. Exodus 3, verse number 13 and 14.
Said Exodus 3?
Yes, verse 13 and 14.
But let me read it. And Moses said,
Exodus 3, 13 and 14.
And Moses said unto God, Behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, the God of your fathers hath sent me unto you. And they say to me, What is his name? What shall I say unto them? And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, Thus shalt thou say unto the children, I am hath sent me unto you. I am hath sent me unto you.
Thank you. Just consider deeply that conversation. Now, God is telling Moses, and that was actually direct communication, that he exists, isn't it? Because he is who he is. I am who I am. God actually exists. Now, notice this. God has allowed you and me as Christians to spare 1/7 of our life time to recognize his creation. That's why today, the Sabbath day, we will rest and reflect on that which God created. Now, that should help us to meditate about that which God created and actually reflect on who God is and why our belief about creation should actually take center stage in all our teachings as Christians. This is why that should be the center of biblical education or Christian education, as it were. Now, there's something else that actually I was fascinated about. And this is the idea of thinking that you can be able somewhat to harmonize the biblical doctrine of creation with their theistic view of creation. I don't know whether we are together, my brothers and sisters. The atheists do not believe that God exists. The atheists believe that life began from nothing. No, from something, not from nothing, from something. But that's something they cannot explain where it came from, because they can actually recognize the existence of matter, but they will not tell you where that matter comes from, because the assumptions actually break down very fast. This is why even the theory of creation is now beginning to give way to something else, because when you look at the assumptions are actually breaking down. Because how can you be able to say that life began with something whose existence you did not recognize? And that existence is not clearly explained from a scientific worldview. And so there is a limitation, as it were, when you look at the theory of evolution. So when you try to harmonize then the theory of evolution with the biblical view of creation, you're actually creating disaster here. In other words, as Christians, we should be able to accept that God exists. And God is responsible that response for that which we see as being natural, including the natural phenomena, and that God is not limited to the laws of the natural phenomena because God supervises that which is created. God will tell the winds stop, and they stop. He will tell the raging waters to stop, and they will stop, isn't it? So he's not limited by that which he created. And human beings, great thinkers and scientists like Darwin, would want us to believe that indeed life began somewhere. But tell me, that which is the basis of that life which began somewhere, how do you explain that? And it's you beginning in the middle somewhere, and therefore forgetting that indeed, or you don't want to accept that indeed there is a God, and a God that is in control of everything else that we see and everything else that actually reflects his existence. Now, very quickly, I would like us to look at Genesis chapter 9 and then verse 13, 16. Somebody read that particular text or passage. It's very important for us. And God sympathizes with us when we make mistakes. But
Yes.
even when we make mistakes, God is love. He is restoring us back to Eden. This is why he wants us to begin understanding that we are not actually random creatures that happen to be here because in our imagination, there should have been something rather than nothing. There we are. Now,
Yeah.
somebody read that passage, please.
You said
Genesis 9, 13 to 16.
13 to 16.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Verse 13.
Yes.
He says, I do set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. 14. And shall come to pass when I bring a cloud over the earth that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. 15. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. 16. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. That is 16.
Thank you. Now, who is speaking those words?
It's God.
Good.
There you are. We made mistakes, and that's why there was a flood here, isn't it? And God has said, no, he will not bring a flood again to destroy humanity. You either believe it or you don't. What God says is true, and what says happens. Now, as Adventists, Seventh-day Adventists, says that we should be able to adhere to teachings like those that we're hearing, reflected and sounding well from the Bible. For it's God that is revealing these things. It's God that has revealed these things to us humans, explaining to us many things about this world, many things that we will not understand without his love. Brothers and sisters, therefore, Christian education must be rooted, must be grounded in the word of God. And any teaching contrary to it must be rejected. We must reject the doctrines of Pope. The Pope is saying that that woman should marry another woman and a man should marry another man. We should reject that. Thank you. I want to stop at that so that I can invite questions.
Yeah. I think I'll add just something on it because you blend something there. Okay, the whole idea is restoration. You know, we lost a grip, as we had said before. And so we tend to win back our steps. And God has given us okay, we have the blueprint of what was happening in the very beginning. And so we know where we went wrong. And so here he's trying, through redemption of Christ, to win us back, to give us back the glory, yeah, the honor that man had. And so, like what you said about okay, marriage is part of a very special and Christian foundation, because as we had read just before that, the doctrine of creation is foundational to any Christian education. Without creation, what are you talking about? Where is Christianity? There is no Christianity, because creation story speaks of marriage, speak of the Sabbath, speak of education, speak of redemption. Yeah, the story of Jesus starts there. The serpent shall bruise. I remember Stan explaining that Eve could not see beyond what God had put in him, because God was already making that the platform for redemption of man. Even as man is fallen, it is still happening. Are you seeing that? And then here it says that everything we believe as Christians, everything rests on the doctrine of six-day creation. The Bible didn't begin with a statement. It began with the creation. It began with God. You know, like everything began with him. And I like how you emphasize on Genesis 1 verse 1, that in the beginning, God does not start in the beginning, oh, there's dinosaurs a billion years. There's nothing like that. It just tells us that there was someone, not somebody. Someone was in charge of this. Someone did this. And I think that's the winning point. My point was the other part where you say that it is, what is this? Yeah, like if we are to help humanity be redeemed to its former state, we will not blend atheism with Christianity, with true belief. You cannot use doubt to preach faith. Yeah, and so even as we train and try to educate our masses, educate our children in the way of the Christian world, I think it's good that we emphasize on the simple, basic things of the story of creation, because that is the foundation that we should rest our questions. The learned men, as you remember in the days of Christ, they're always on the wrong side, because you cannot mix human knowledge with God's knowledge, because it is foolishness to them, as we read. Yeah, it can never be wisdom. And I think that is something we should understand, that we are trying to regain. So we can't use the world's view to regain the world. That doesn't work like that. Something opposite, something more powerful than it should be used. And I think we have the blueprint. God has taught us. We've learned. We can read for ourselves. Anyone can study the scriptures and understand. Man has dominion. And I think that is something it never gets to our head. We have dominion over ourselves, over the things we do, and God has given us that power to be like him, to be creators. Yeah. So I think that one was a good emphasis. And Leibniz's question, as a good thinker, yeah, he did his part, but doesn't answer the question that will heal the world from its fall. So just blend in as we take the biblical worldview, because we are Christians, so we must rest in the Christian explanations, Christian perspective of things. Yeah, I think that is it.
By the way, did you know that God's word admonishes us? Now, Paul tells us, for those of us that are perishing, now God's word and the teachings that are actually in the Bible, the doctrines and so on, they will sound foolish to our minds, those of us that are perishing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the Bible says.
Maybe, as I also share on the same, is to say that this German thinker, I think these are populist thinking that used to be there. In my life, I've never met this guy. There is a lot of history which I've also read, but it was not in Leibniz. But they start by saying many years ago. And those many years ago is at creation. At creation, even when the Bible was written, it's many years ago. We can be able to even tell the years if we go back. But this gentleman here, who is a German thinker, is out of his ignorance that he was trying to reason. But he had not read the Bible. If he would have read the Bible, he would have understood, and his view would not be now what we are trying to read, because this is his view that is now bothering our head. And trying to now justify that ignorance is no defense. Because if you would have read the Bible, you would have understood why there was something instead of nothing. The other one is the others. The others are very good scholars, and they are very intelligent people, and they've read the Bible. The view is they only don't believe in that Bible because I think they think that they should have been involved in what happened. So that otheist has another different view because maybe he was not involved. But what is important, and it is points out in on Wednesday, is that our teachings would firmly be on the Bible. If you read the Bible from the start to the end, then there's nothing for you not to understand why there's creation, the redemption story, and even the life of Jesus. It is in this Bible. So as we are trying to understand the biblical worldview, just read the Bible again and again and again. Where you didn't understand the first time, you will understand during the second reading and the third reading. So ours should be entirely on reading and adhering to the teachings of the Bible. Those other Hellenistic views and the other thinkers and professors are not for this Bible.
Good. Mary, you have a comment?
No, I was just waiting to move on.
Yes. In fact, I think I wanted to take it to you now. You are to take us back now. Now that we've gone back to biblical view, wanted to see what do we have about worshiping the Redeemer. And I think the redemption comes in next. Elders just taken us through creation. Now we are now going into the issue of redemption. Mary, pick us up from there.
Thank you, Brother Stan. I think my work has been made easy by 3 commentators who have talked about a Redeemer and a Creator. That is basically what Wednesday is talking about, the world view of the doctrine of redemption. It's very important for us to take note of the fact that there can be no redemption without creation. Because when there was creation, then there was the fall of man, then there was the man sinned, and then the punishment of sin is going to be death. This is where Brother Josh talks about the plan of redemption. Genesis 3:15, which talks about I bruise the heel and you crush the head. The plan of redemption is put in place that very time. This Redeemer we are worshiping is the same Redeemer who created the earth and everything in it. When you look at John chapter 1, verse 1 to 14, there are many verses. We may not have time to read all of them. But Elder Maranga had talked about, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was God, and He made all things. That is John chapter 1, verse 1 to 4, focuses on the Word and focuses the Word being God and focuses on the fact that He made all things. As you continue reading the verses, you realize the fact that John, as the forerunner of Jesus Christ, had talked about Jesus being the light. He was coming to the world that He made. As much as the world did not recognize Him, it is Him who made the world, and He is coming to this world. And when He is coming to this world, we have a team of those who receive Him. And those who receive Jesus Christ have a right to become the children of God. You know.
Yeah.
So here, becoming a child of God, we're talking about a redeemed person. A redeemed person is the one who has accepted Jesus Christ, the right to become children of God. And these children of God are not just by birth, it's the children of God by grace. So when you look at John, he gives us this perspective of a creator. Also, John gives us the perspective of a redeemer. Now, when we talk about our worldview of redemption, you know, what are we educating the world about this redemption? You know, redemption just comes in place because the created man has fallen from the position that God had put that man. When man has fallen from that position, it brings in the need of a redeemer. If man had worshipped God in the Garden of Eden without falling into sin, the issue of a redeemer could have not come in. But now man falls. This calls in for the redeemer, and this redeemer is Jesus Christ. And this is the Jesus Christ who is crucified, and this is the Jesus Christ who has to give us the life, who has to redeem us. When you look at the three angels' message and focus on Revelation 14, 6 and 7, I know all of us know the story of the three angels' message, but I just want us to look at this one line. Fear God and give him glory, for the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who made heaven, the earth, and the sea, and the springs of water. So the everlasting gospel actually links God as a creator. And this creator has to be worshipped. You know, he has to be worshipped because he's the one who created us. He's the one who created us. He's the one who redeems us. Our response to our creator. He's the one who created us. He's the one who redeems us. And redeems us through his sacrifice on the cross. That is important teaching that we have to talk about. As much as we talk about Jesus Christ's second coming, what we are waiting for as Christians, the first coming, this one of the cross, is very important for us. None can be there without the other. So it is important for us to look at that plan of salvation. It should be part of the education that we should be able to share our worldview of why is it that we have to worship the Redeemer. We worship this Redeemer who is our creator, you know, because without worshiping him as our creator, then the redemption issue doesn't come in. Brother Stan, let me stop there for comments.
Yeah, there's also a comment I need to read quickly from YouTube as we go on. And the first comment that we are having is coming from Andrew Tarus. I can see as a comment, he talks about we need to understand that the human race is a special creation of a personal loving God, and our purpose as a race and as individuals is to glorify Him. We are created in His own image. And then we have a comment coming from Kefa. Two fundamental doctrines central to our faith: the doctrine of creation and the doctrine of redemption. And it refers us to the verses that Mary, you've talked about. I think then we can move on. I think we need some comments coming from the rest of us. Is there any comment? I think I've just put on comments from the few members.
Okay, I can comment. I'll use the story of in the Bible. There's this verse where we read, it is in, let me get the verse, it is in Luke, where it says, and he said unto them, which of you, shall have a friend and shall go to him at midnight and say to him, friend, lend me 3 loaves, for a friend of mine is come to me from a journey and I have nothing to set before him. And he from within shall answer and say, don't trouble me. The door is now shut, and my children are with me in bed. I cannot rise and give you. I say unto you, though he will not rise and give him, because he is his friend, yet because of his importunity, he will rise and give him as many as he needs. My whole point is this. Here we have a needy friend, then we have the mightier friend. So I'll just connect that with I call it a threefold friendship. That is the hungry friend that needs the help. We have the praying friend seeking the help, and the mighty friend, which is God, who is willing to give as many as he wants. The whole point is redemption comes in a time when we have needs. We need help. Yeah, man fell, we went the wrong way, and so we are back to asking the Creator, like, how can we get back that which was lost from us? And as Madam has explained, that without explaining the story of redemption, the story of Christ, the friend who is willing to give as many loaves as we need, yeah, I think without that, the whole humanity is lost. Without hope, it's a story of hope. Yeah, the story that explains that as much as we are in need, as much as we are fallen, that God is willing to do what? To sit back and say, like, he will rise from his bed, even with his children, as we have read that. I like that, but it's just so funny, yeah? That he's going to give, he will rise from his comfort and say, okay, he's my friend, he's in need, and I'll give him as many loaves as he needs. So as we focus on the story of education, we fell, man, we went too far. Actually, we are, remember there was the floods after the creation, meaning things were worse. God destroyed the first generation. Then we have the story of Lot. He destroyed another Lot. Are you seeing? All this we've been a mess. But even in that scenario, God is still willing to do it, to redeem us back and to use as many resources as the whole heaven can contain to redeem us back to our first estate. And I think that is, for me, it's mind-blowing. And I would just emphasize that education without the story of redemption is it's a mess. It's super wrong. Like we should be focusing on showing people the goodness of what God we are. Because remember, the serpent, the story of the devil, we read that in the first lesson. All these things are one. So if we connect all these things and how we are getting lost and how much God is willing to spend on that project Earth, redemption project, should be enough to help us understand that he is for the good. And I think there's no redemption without sort of creation. So let us appreciate the both. Yeah.
So I like a particular comment that you the way Mary has put it, the way Josh has put it. But then let's not get lost. And let's not get lost in this particular sense that we're talking about. The whole idea, this redemption plan we are looking at, that we are learning, that we are understanding, this worldview. I think the whole idea of this worldview is something that we should not share to do selfishly. It should not be about me. It should also be about your brother. And I'm looking at the comment that I've just put on the screen there, that the next thing that comes in, and it's still part of the redemption story, is that we are called to share this everlasting gospel with others. I think this is very important. Why are we getting ourselves educated? So that we share. And this thing always comes in, that every time we study these words and practice it, then there's always that particular point that we are asked to teach. And Jesus leaves us with that particular message, what I have taught you. So the whole issue of the redemption plan, again, brings us back. Why are we doing all this particular education? Maybe that's a question. Why are we having this worldview, a biblical worldview? Is it part of a process that we should be able to edify ourselves and use it to edify the rest of the world before the coming of Christ? I think that's very important for us to remember as we move on. Now, I don't know if there's any other comment before we bring in Josh, because I wanted Josh to come up with his, and then now we have a general talk about the worldview. Elder, I
have comments.
Yes, Mama. Yes.
I have a comment about what Mary had said about creation and redemption. When and the elder has talked to us about John 14, John 1 up from from 1 to 14. When we know the creation and redemption, we find that John had said, in the beginning there is a word, and we know that God said, let it be, and we know, as a Seventh-day Adventist, we know that the word is Jesus. There was a word, and they said, if it was not the word, there was nothing was made which was made. That means it was made. And then when we continue the whole thing up to, we find that it said that this world became a man. He went to the man and he became a man and he was born. He stayed with us and we saw his work. And he was a person who was loved, who respected God, men and God, and his love. His love, he has respected God as the Father, and he has called him the Son of God. But he was a creator. I never talked about him creating, but he said, what Moses said about me is when Moses said about the creation. So we find that in that, John summarized our way of seeing God, biblical way of seeing Jesus, because he was a word, and there's nothing which was made which was made. So that means it is the word. And then we come to end when he says that he became, he was born, he became a man, and he stayed with us, and we saw his work. So that's when we can see, I can see the reason why Mary had told us that the creation with the redemption is connected. And that is when I found that the elder didn't want us to read it because of time, but that is summarized, that John had told us about the creation and the redemption. Thank you.
So thank you so much. I think that's a very, very important point. It marries the two, the whole issue of creation and. But now here comes the interesting thing that I want us, Josh, to pick us up. We've talked about creation. We've talked about redemption. And last week we talked about the law of God. Now, we're in the process of the worldview, Josh. Now, last week we talked about the law of God, and we talked about the law is mainly to reflect, it doesn't save us. We've talked about redemption before, we are now talking about the law of God again. What does that have to connect with this worldview that we are talking about?
Here we go. Okay. I remember last week we've been touching the law, and I think we touched it many times because one of the points that I just picked from this Thursday, because it is showing us a reflection of, it is giving us the blueprint of man's creation. Like, you can know if when you get a gari, when you get a car, you are given the logbook, and then it has all the details about the car, and then there's the manual. Okay, for those who buy second-hand vehicles, maybe you don't experience this, yeah? But if you get a car, like from the shop, surely you'll get that there's a manual. Let me not go to the car. Let me use electronic, simple electronic, even an earphone or something. Till there's that, this is the reader's manual. It explains, it explains to you how this runs and what the switch, the on, and all these things. And I think that's where we come in about the law of God. Remember, as God made man, I always tend to go back because I believe this things should be talking about now. It is the story of restoration. Restoration to God's original image, yeah? Because we lost it, yeah? So how does God, how does he use, why is the law so many times repeated? It's because the law has the details about what man is made of, what can make him be the kind of person God made him to be. And I think that is the bottom line, if I was even to stop. Because that is, it just tells us, hey, Josh, you are made, remember in Ephesians, Elder, you read for us this in Ephesians chapter, is it 3 verse 7? Oh, it says that, for by grace are we saved, not by ourselves, it is the work of God. Then the next verse, verse 8 says that it is, we were created for good works. Are you seeing? We're going to do right, yeah? But then something happened that we went the wrong way because we lost the blueprint. We forgot what makes us run the whole way. And there's this Mr. Mangi has mentioned these philosophers, and his point was sometimes we tend to quote them too much until we forget why we are really, what are we really studying. And as Elder explained, is that their view of things is not refined because they are not rooted in the word. But for us, we have the advantage of hearing their view and having another higher view, because God is the creator of even our minds, meaning his thoughts are higher than ours. Yeah. And so when we use the law of God, then as Madam has said about redemption, it becomes mind-blowing because the law explains to us we were made to do good. Then we lost it. It explains how we lost it. It's because of sin. Because we've read here that if we are going to make redemption central to a Christian worldview, then as we saw last week, God's law, the 10 Commandments, must be central. For we are redeemed from it, redeemed from sin. It is sin that he's making us go the wrong way. And how? The law tells us, hey, you have stolen, you have killed, you have done this and this, you have to stop. But then does not help us stop. Redemption comes in where Christ gets into it. And Mom from Homer Bay, you have explained about John chapter 1 verse 13, and I just underlined it. It says that which are born out of blood, not the will of flesh, not the will of man, but of God. Then it says verse 14, and the word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory.
You're losing it, Josh.
Yes? Hello? Oh, okay. Yes, I was saying that there's that part where Mama has explained about how the law, that is verse 17, for the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. Why does he blend two things in the same verse? We have the law and then we have grace and truth. As we read from John 17 verse 3, it says, 15 verse 3, it says that now you are made clean through the word which has spoken unto you. That's the truth. The truth cleanses us. Hearing the word, sharing the word, one-to-one, and being recipients of God's, the daily manna that God shares to us, tells us how to clean ourselves. And that's why one of us has explained that without explaining redemption in our stories, then we lose it because we don't explain how man can get back to his first estate. So for me, I would just put it in the very simple way that the law of God comes in as a reminder and a blueprint to tell us this is what you are made of. Then, previously in Thursday, he has explained to us, I, the law, can't make you clean. Following ceremoniously, the law of God does not make you a good person, but Christ enables you to develop the good thing in you that he was originally created. Become vibrant, and then we act naturally, doing God's will. I think that is an overall summary of it. Yeah.
Now, Josh is taking us through the law of God, and I think we've actually come to the very end of what we are talking about. But I don't think this would be of any harm. Now that we already now see the biblical worldview, now that the science has been passed, I want to piece up between education and this worldview. Elder took us through that. But are we understanding? Because I think my biggest worry would be we come through this particular process without understanding why it is important so far to get this biblical worldview as we move forward towards education. And then maybe you could say your comment, and maybe we could have our closing comments before now we can close. We still have roughly around 15 minutes to conclude.
Yeah, one quick comment, Stan.
Okay.
About what Josh has taken us through. Now, remember, we've given there, I think, although it's an extreme phenomenon, we're given an idea about human thinking and how human philosophers, would actually make decisions on the basis of the worldview. Now, remember, we see there that the French nation at some time in history were debating on the issues of morality relating to the capital punishment. And because in their own system, they would not be able to find an answer to what they saw as a problem in relation to capital punishment. And so when they were appealing to their philosophers, now their philosophers used human constructs of morality. We're talking about human ways of thinking, human ways of morality. Now, do you notice, therefore, that in their thinking, they do not have knowledge about the law of God. They do not have an idea about the moral code. And you and me that are fallen human beings cannot be able to make correct judgments, if you will, because we're not righteous. And you know what this philosopher what this philosopher recommended? It was an extreme. He said, all the prisoners should be set free. And the idea of capital punishment, by the way, did not make sense because it was based on human logic. He did actually recommend that in their prisons, they should not have any captives that should face capital punishment. That aside, God has given us the moral law, which should be able to guide us. And here we should be able to see the importance of God's moral code. Now, Josh, remember that we have always discussed the idea of the law of God as being a mirror that allows us to be able to see when we're making a mistake. Now, without it, we cannot be able to know that we're making mistakes.
Yes.
Although it doesn't save us, it does point us to God, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that is something that we have been explained. Brother Monkey, you had a point.
Yeah, let me say, one, sin is not only breaking God's law, it's also breaking God's heart. Because when he gives us these laws, he gives us these laws so that we can be able to keep them and follow them. So he has shown you the way, and it has shown, then you end up breaking his heart by breaking the laws. So that is what you should also know. The other one is the desire of all ages. There is a book known as Desire of All Ages. If you read the preface of that book, you will understand that the desire of all ages is Jesus the Redeemer. And if you understand it better, you will see that the philosophers, these atheists, these thinkers, these evolutionists, all of them are desiring for something. And that desire is Jesus the Redeemer. So as we worship the Redeemer, it is important, as Stan has put it, we should also go and teach the others so that we can now meet with these philosophers. Let us not read the Bible, understand the Bible so that we can be able to win arguments when it comes to that. No, let us be able to read the Word of God so that we can tell it to the others and show the love that God has, even in the laws of God, so that they can be able to follow what they really desire, or which desire is Jesus the Redeemer. Yes.
Wow. That was a good way of seeing it, that as much as we are reading from the other worldly philosophers, that they also have a desire for something. And it is the work of the Christian world to educate them how they will reach to that, how that desire will be fulfilled. And I think that is by having the divinity into their humanity. And I think that is something we should think about. Brother Stan, you're back.
Yeah, I'm back. So we've now looked at all these particular views that we're now looking at, and basically, I think I like the comment that Ben has talked about, that all this that we're doing is not for competitive sake. It is for us to understand the truth and share the truth. Because so many people out there are not scientists, the way we are talking, are not people who are struggling they are just struggling to get the message of truth. And if we take too long, maybe that particular issue is that we don't educate ourselves well enough and train ourselves well enough and study well enough, then those people out there that are waiting for us to advocate to them might not get a chance to hear from us because we are busy preparing ourselves to come to a debate with those with the worldly views. And that is not what we should be doing. So what do we have in front of us? We have an issue of education of biblical worldview. And this education that we've talked about in the first 4 chapters, the first 3 chapters that we read in our lesson, was all about preparing ourselves on how we are going to teach it. So maybe we have not learned yet. Maybe we don't know these particular things. But next week, the Master, Jesus, comes in. And we see how we will now learn from him. How does he do it? Does he do it in form of competing and knowing what other people are doing in closed doors? Does he do it in form of trying to ridicule those who don't know? We will learn from next week, because next week, our lesson for next week is going to be, and I really want every one of us to come in, because this is the time now we are learning from the Master himself. So Jesus, as the Master teacher, is going to be coming in next week. I don't want to talk much about that particular comment, and I want to thank all the people I've seen. There's a lot of activities in YouTube, and I thank all of us who are already here. As usual, you've always been quite supportive, and thank you so much. And I'd like Brother Ben to close us off with a word of prayer as we need. Thank you so much for all the time that we've kept today. Thank you on that.
Okay, let us pray. Our dear Father in heaven, we come before you this morning with a lot of thanks because you've given us this Sabbath. You are a creator, you are a redeemer. And Father, today you've taught us that your eyes are all over us. You can be able to tell us that there is evil. You can be able to tell us there is good. But in all, you've given us the decision to take whichever path we feel is good for us. And that's why you are ready to also come and redeem us from the evil that we might have done. Father, it's wonderful that you've taught us. You are still educating us, but we are still very far from understanding how divine you are and how you are filled with the love that you can be able to teach us until we now understand and come to your fold. We are grateful because you are a creator and you are our redeemer. And that's why we are here to worship you. As the first angel's message says, that we should worship you because you are a creator and our redeemer. We now come before you asking that there are programs that are ahead of us this Sabbath. Father, we seek that you also take control of them. And also there are worshipers who are all over the world worshiping you on this Sabbath. You know that this Sabbath is yours and you created us for us to worship you. And we are here to thank you because you are able to give us this rest. Father, we're also praying for these programs that are ahead of us. Father, we ask that you guide us and lead them. For we do pray this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Once again, thank you so much for all of you who've attended. The next session starts at exactly 11 o'clock. I'd like all of you to be here. Don't miss it. There's going to be a very exciting thing coming from the health ministry. And we have our speaker today, Brother Umbete, who's going to be with us. And there's going to also to be a children's story at the same time. So please switch on there. I'd like all of us to go straight to your YouTube channels. I think we've also linked it to Facebook today, so that every one of us can actually watch. So thank you so much. Thank you, Mom, from all the way from Kindu Bay. And thank you so much for Mary again for being here this week. Ben,
being
thank you so much, and God bless you all.
God bless you too.